They said I was brain dead, ready for organ donation, but inside I was alive, screaming for someone to hear. The last sound I remember before the black swallowed me whole wasn't the screech of tires or the splintering of metal. It was a voice. A quiet, measured, clinical voice. A voice I should never have heard because that voice was declaring me dead. And the chilling truth was I heard every single word of it. I was trapped, a silent, screaming witness to my own demise, floating in a void where I shouldn't have existed. It's a feeling that never truly leaves you, that visceral horror of being pronounced gone while every fiber of your being desperately fights to break free. Before all of this, before the void and the declarations, I was just Zach, 21 years old, living in Frederick, Oklahoma. A small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone and life revolves around simple pleasures. For me, those pleasures often involved speed dust and the roar of an engine. I loved my all-terrain vehicle. It wasn't just a machine, it was freedom. Out in the country, kicking up dirt, popping wheelies that probably terrified my folks, but thrilled me to my core. My friends even called me outlaw because of the stunts I'd pull, the way I'd push the limits. I worked at a warehouse, a steady job, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and funded my passion for those four-wheel adventures. Life felt well normal, invincible even. That's the funny thing about being 21, isn't it? You feel like nothing can touch you. Like the rules apply to everyone else. Helmets? Nah, not for outlaw, not for me. It was a casual November day, just like any other outriding with my buddies. The sun was probably setting, casting long shadows across the fields. I remember the feel of the handlebars, the rumble beneath me. I pulled one of my signature wheelies, maybe a little too high, a little too daring. And then a sudden heart-stopping swerve to avoid a friend. My four-wheeler flipped. Time seemed to slow, then warp as I was airborne, a helpless passenger in my own descent. The pavement rushed up to meet me. The impact was instant. A flash of blinding pain, then a silence deeper than any I'd ever known. A silence that stretched and twisted into the unsettling quiet of oblivion. When I came to, it wasn't a sudden awakening. It was more like an emergence. A slow, terrifying crawl from an infinite darkness. I was in an ambulance, then a helicopter, the distant hum of rotors barely registering through the haze. I knew I was hurt badly. My head, a dull, throbbing ache that was both far away and intimately present. They airlifted me from Frederick to United Regional Healthcare System in Wichita Falls, Texas. A trauma center. Even through the fog, I knew that meant serious trouble. The first few days were a blur of intense pain medication and a strange disembodied awareness. I was unresponsive, a body lying still while a frantic world moved around me. My Glasgow Coma Scale score was a terrifyingly low 6 when I arrived, and then it dropped to a 3. I was on a ventilator, my own breath stolen my body, maintained by machines. My intracranial pressure was skyrocketing, topping 60 mmHg, then 85 mmHg. My pupils were fixed non-reactive. They gave me mannitol propofol, dexamethasone antibiotics. I heard snippets of conversations, worried murmurs, the hushed tones of doctors talking to my parents. I heard my father Doug recounting later that doctors had shown him a PET scan. He said there was no activity at all, no blood flow at all, just black, the whole brain. It was a death sentence delivered on a screen. They called in a certified neurologist. He performed the standard tests, no response to noxious stimuli, unreactive pupils, absent corneal, and gag reflexes. They couldn't do the ice water caloric test because of cerebrospinal fluid leaking from my ear, and the apnea test was skipped due to a dangerously low heart rate, my bradycardia, fluctuating in the 44-54 range. It was November 19th, 2007. At 39.7 hours after the crash, the neurologist declared me brain dead. Just like that. The hospital even notified the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and I became the state's 610th motor vehicle fatality of the year. My name was added to a grim list. My parents, shattered, were shown those scans. They were told I met the legal and medical requirements for declaring a patient brain dead. They knew my driver's license indicated I was an organ donor. In their grief honoring what they believed were my wishes, they consented to organ donation. Preparations began. The transplant team moved swiftly, initiating the protocol to optimize my organs for harvesting. Levothyroxine, insulin, steroids, vitamin K, administered to a body they believed was merely a vessel no longer inhabited. And then the goodbyes. My family gathered around my bed, their faces etched with unspeakable sorrow. The air was thick with unspoken farewells, with the quiet sobs of those I loved most. I could feel their presence, their hands on me, their tears falling, and still I was trapped. Aware, yes, but unable to move, unable to speak, unable to convey the terrifying truth I was still here. This is where the nightmare truly began, and where the miracle, or whatever you choose to call it, unfolded. I was aware, so incredibly, utterly aware. I heard the doctor not just once, but distinctly saying I was brain dead and passing away. Those words hit me like a physical blow, even in my comatose state. Anger surged through me, a hot, desperate wave of frustration. I was right there. I wanted to scream, to shout, to claw my way out of the darkness and tell them they were wrong. I felt this incredible, overwhelming urge to get up and do something, anything to make them see. I remember thinking if I could have, I probably would have been a broken window that went out. That's how desperate I was. And then a new sensation, a sharp, stinging pain. It wasn't medical, it was deliberate. My cousin Dan Coffin, a nurse himself, was there. He had a hunch, a feeling. He decided to act on it. While a hospital nurse was working on me, perhaps preparing to remove tubes, Dan dug one of his fingernails in under one of mine. It was excruciating, but it was also a lifeline. An electrical current shot through me, an undeniable signal. I had to react. I yanked my arm away, pulling it across my body with every ounce of strength I could muster from the depths of my being. Then he did it again. He grabbed my right foot and scraped the sole forcefully with an unopened pocketknife heel to toes. Another jolt, another demand for a response. I jerked my foot away from his hand. The shock and disbelief in the room were palpable even to me. A physician was called over. He checked my reflexes again. A positive corneal reflex. A tiny flicker of life. The preparations for organ harvesting were canceled, just like that. The whole process stopped. I was put back on the traumatic brain injury protocol. The propofol infusion that was possibly confounding my clinical assessment was actually increased initially, but somehow I continued to improve. Within hours, 2 different physicians examined me. They found my corneal and gag reflexes were present. One even reported that I grimaced and moved all my extremities when they tested my corneas. My pupils were reactive, and most astonishingly, there was purposeful movement in my left upper extremity. I was back. Or at least the real me was starting to fight its way through the wreckage. Later, I learned that what I experienced, that terrifying awareness while being utterly unresponsive, is called cognitive motor dissociation, or covert consciousness. It means my brain was functioning at a level that couldn't be detected by standard bedside exams. It's a chilling thought how many others have been trapped in that same silent, conscious void, unable to break through. My case brought to light the problematic nature of relying solely on brain blood flow scans, especially given my persistent bradycardia. The slow heart rate, it turns out, likely attenuated the blood flow so much that even though there was some present, it was misinterpreted as none. A gray zone between no flow and low flow that almost cost me everything. The days and weeks that followed were a slow, arduous climb back to life. My intracranial pressure, which had been dangerously high, gradually returned to normal by the 4th day. On day 7, I opened my eyes spontaneously for the first time. It was like seeing the world reborn, hazy and overwhelming, but real. On day 14, I spoke my first words. Just a few, probably mumbled, but They were my words, a bridge back to my parents who had been through hell and back for me. On day 11, I was weaned off the ventilator, a massive step towards independence. Soon after, I was discharged from the ICU. The hospital had done what they could, and now it was time for rehabilitation. 34 days after the accident, I was transferred to a rehab center. It was tough, grueling work. I had lost so much, and every small gain felt monumental. My mother, Pam, later said, discovering I was alive was the most miraculous feeling, that they had gone from the lowest possible emotion that a parent could feel to the top of the mountains again. And my great-uncle James Blackford was convinced it was a miracle from God. He truly believed I had been dead and gone. After 48 days of intensive rehabilitation, 50 days after that fateful crash, I walked out of the rehab center and returned home. It was a moment I'll never forget. The fresh air, the familiar surroundings, the overwhelming embrace of my family. I was alive, really truly alive. But recovery isn't a straight line. It's a winding path full of unexpected turns. I still suffer from memory problems, a frustrating blankness in some areas, a jumble in others. And emotionally, I'm different. My patience, once a strength, now feels thin, frayed at the edges. It's hard, as I told NBC later, just ain't got the patience. But I'm working on it. I'm looking forward to getting my driver's license back, to returning to my job as a warehouse worker. These are small steps, but they're steps back to a normal life. I even kept the pocket knife Dan used on me. It sits there, a small, tangible reminder of how close I came to the edge, how easily my life could have been erased. It makes me thankful, profoundly thankful, that they didn't give up. As I joked once, only the good die young, so I didn't go. My story, I've come to understand, isn't just about me. It's about the terrifying uncertainty that can exist even in the most definitive medical declarations. It's about the profound importance of a single hunch, a moment of doubt, a cousin's desperate act. I was minutes away from organ harvesting, literally. Had Dan not been there, had he not acted, I wouldn't be here today, living a full life, working, raising a family. It forces you to confront the fragile line between life and death, and how easily that line can be misread. Whether you call it a miracle, a survival, or a medical anomaly, my experience shattered the notion of absolute certainty in brain death diagnosis. It underscores the critical need for endless vigilance, for a watch and wait approach when there's any doubt, any confounding factor, any hint of something more beneath the surface. Because sometimes, even when all the machines say you're gone, you're still there, listening, feeling, waiting for someone, anyone, to hear the silent scream of awareness from the void. Life is an extraordinary gift. It's precious, fragile, and resilient in ways we can barely comprehend. My journey back from beyond has taught me to cherish every breath, every memory, every messy, complicated moment, and to always, always listen to that quiet voice of intuition, because sometimes it's the only thing standing between a goodbye and a second chance.